Well, looking at this whole scenario, well, that's his perspective on this entire matter. But you also suggest that they have to open those communication lines. But if they then think that it will not be a good idea to open those communication lines, what other options can there be?
You see, it's now almost about 10 days that the girls have been brought back to Abuja. The 10 days, I'm sure the first 2 days, is it true, is it not true, on the part of the parents? So it is true, when they saw them on television and so on and so forth. The time between the time they go to Abuja and now, the security authorities ought to have made arrangements in such a way that communication ought to be put in place. Once the communication lines are established and parents can get in touch, maybe on specific periods of the day, you see, because that can, if it's any time, it can disrupt the work that the government officials are doing. But maybe, say, from 10 o'clock to 11, if you are not lucky to get through to the lines at that time, try between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They can give specific time frames during which parents can get in touch with the children. I don't think it will disrupt anything. No.
This thing that just hits my mind when I think about this whole situation as it is unfolding, and I look at swapping deadly criminals with the girls. You are the security expert. You have played deeply into how de-radicalization is being done and how you would release the process of releasing a captive on both sides. That is releasing the Boko Haram commanders. Now we're hearing some of the tabloids saying that they are aiming to attack Abuja. Perhaps this is just by the way, perhaps it's just noise they're making. But what will the army do before it releases a hardened criminal like that?
That's right. In the first place, the released Boko Haram detainees had been with the security authorities for quite some time. So if nothing was done all the time they were in detention, that's a shame. And I don't know, because we do not know the nitty-gritty of the negotiations that led to the release of these girls. But I believe that the Boko Haram commanders, I don't know whether they demanded specific individuals. If they did, from the period they were, those names were mentioned, I expected that the security authorities would have pinpointed those people, and the process of de-radicalization ought to have started. So that by the time, in fact, you release the people that the terrorists are demanding, you must have done some work on them. But because ultimately, let's be frank, in all hostage takings, once you have armed conflict, it could be by terrorists, it could be by rights group, it could be by anybody. Once you have hostages taken, it is not a straightforward thing. Once hostages are taken, and hostages are taken at any time, it's always a surprise on the people on the other side. You know, the belligerents, strike the other side by taking hostage to force a particular thing, to force a particular agreement, to force a particular concession. So it is not new. In fact, people criticizing the government for swapping Boko Haram terrorists for the girls, I just feel, no, it's neither here nor there. If you are just lucky, you are lucky. If you are not lucky, you release people that are going to become a sort of problem to you. In this case, in fact, just almost I think about 2 or 3 days after the girls were released, a new video came saying that they are going to attack Abuja and things like that. I expected it. And I thought security authorities ought to have known that. Immediately, certain specific people were being demanded by Boko Haram. Those individuals ought to have been identified, and serious de-radicalization ought to have started on them. But that is neither here nor there, because de-radicalization, how much time can you give to it? You and I, it's a guess.
It's subjective.
It's a guess.
It isn't that clear cut.
Huh?
I mean, the time you give to it is not as straightforward as some think.
No, it's not straightforward. It's not a straightforward thing. And I believe that once those people are released, even if the Boko Haram people are demanding 20 of their detainees to be released, I don't doubt it, because it's ultimately what we are going to do. How many alternatives does the government have? It's either of you combat them to where you take the hostages yourself back, or you do some air bombings and all the rest of it. Once you drop a bomb in the air, do you know the number of people that are going to be killed? You may end up killing the very people you want to save.
Let me use the word useless.
The last one is what the government is doing.
If I'm going to permit me to use the word useless, if we have to go that way and say perhaps, does the army have the capacity to make those demanded by Boko Haram, their commanders, does the army have the capacity to make them useless? To make them useless, even if you are releasing them to Boko Haram?
Does the army have
the capacity to make those being demanded by Boko Haram useless?
You see, making their powers useless is an ongoing thing, because if you remember in our previous interactions on this very particular Boko Haram something, it's not a one-day issue. It's going to be a long time. I think I remember I said at the time we had the capture of Sambisa Forest and all the rest of it, I highlighted and I said it's a new phase of this struggle. Once you have this type of situation where your own citizens take up arms against you, it's going to be a long process. Even when you have sufficiently brought that down and you have almost removed almost all their powers to do anything, it is still something that you still look over your shoulders for, because it doesn't stop easily. It doesn't stop easily.
All right, we'll let you talk about the last one, which you say the government is doing in all of this process, when we return in just a moment. Do stay with us.